The cozy atmosphere of the cafe made it the perfect place for a deep and meaningful conversation. Two girlfriends were sitting at a table by the window. Smiling happily, they shared the latest news with each other. Kimberly and Monica hadn't seen each other for about a month, so they had a lot to talk about. "My Stanley bought me these earrings. I don't know how much they cost, but I'm sure they're very expensive," Monica said, smiling smugly. In response to Monica's news, Kimberly looked out the window with feigned interest and hurried to change the topic of the conversation. However, the astute Monica didn't let this trick slide. "You're turning 30 soon, my friend, and you're still single," Monica said with a meaningful sigh. "Actually, I know how old I am, so I don't need you to constantly remind me of my age," Kimberly answered more sharply than she intended. However, she understood perfectly well what her friend was trying to say. It was time for her to start a family. After all, Monica got married 5 years ago and was already raising a beautiful baby. Meanwhile, Kimberly was living alone in a small house on the outskirts of Detroit, which she inherited from her late mother. Sure, Kimberly went out on dates, but none of them ever developed into a serious relationship, as none of those men ever managed to win over her heart. But you can't stay single forever. You really need to get a boyfriend. Take, for example, my husband's business partner, Dylan. He's handsome and divorced. Get down to earth and try spending some time with him," Monica said yet again. Hearing her friend mention the familiar name, Kimberly smiled ironically and shook her head emphatically. Monica's reaction was caused by the fact that she knew full well that Dylan was an alcoholic and a womanizer who never missed a chance to flirt with yet another woman. "I'd rather stay single forever than date someone like that," Kimberly added, realizing that the evening that started so well was hopelessly spoiled. Seeing that the conversation had reached a dead end, Monica pointedly looked at her watch and started getting ready to head home. Meanwhile, Kimberly paid the waitress, and having left a big tip, went out into the street. The fresh fall wind instantly cooled her flushed cheeks, which turned red because of the unpleasant conversation. After saying a dry goodbye to Monica, Kimberly walked slowly towards the bus stop. The woman felt that her friend could see right through her and could even predict her next move with frightening accuracy. Of course, Kimberly was well aware of the unflattering light she appeared in before her colleagues and acquaintances. The woman didn't remember her way home because, having warmed up on the bus, she fell asleep almost immediately. If one of Kimberly's acquaintances hadn't woken her up, she would have probably missed her stop. Having profusely thanked the well-wisher, the woman got off the bus and hurried home, shivering in the piercing wind. It was getting dark, but before Kimberly had time to take even a few steps, she noticed someone's blurry silhouette. Looking more closely, Kimberly saw a tall man dressed in some kind of rags. Meanwhile, the stranger smiled sweetly at her and sat down on a small bench at the entrance at a small square. It's probably some homeless person who has nowhere to hide from the wind, the woman thought with sympathy. Kimberly felt very sorry for the man that was left without a roof over his head during the cold season. Having difficulty driving away her sad thoughts, the woman went home, where she immediately found herself in the realm of warmth, comfort, and tranquility. Of course, Kimberly had repeatedly caught herself thinking that she was tired of living alone. But on the other hand, the woman knew that she definitely wouldn't be able to share her life with the first man she came across. "It's okay. Someday I'll find my soulmate," Kimberly whispered with the spell, tossing and turning in bed. That night, the woman couldn't fall asleep until early morning. Kimberly couldn't stop thinking about the homeless man she saw on her way home, who had to stay overnight on a bench under the cold Detroit sky. Therefore, having woken up with a headache, the first thing Kimberly did was find a pair of wooden mittens and a warm scarf, which she intended to give to the homeless man. The woman drank her coffee quickly and left the house, hurrying to check the place in the square where she saw the homeless man the day before. However, Kimberly was disappointed to find that the bench was empty. Well, he probably went somewhere else. Stupid me for trying to give him some warm clothes, Kimberly thought with regret. Then, having taken another look around, she put the clothes into her bag and rushed off to work. The woman worked in the city library and got used to the cozy silence, which was occasionally broken by the rustle of turning pages or the muffled murmur of visitors. All day long, all Kimberly could think about was the man living out on the street. Kimberly Davis was a very kind and compassionate woman who always tried to help those around her. Therefore, as soon as the workday came to an end, she hurried to that same spot near the square. Fortunately, this time, Kimberly found the homeless man at that same bench. The stranger was dressed in a battered jacket, worn jeans with patches, and old sneakers, the soles of which were literally about to fall off. Seeing Kimberly, the man smiled shyly and lowered his eyes. The man's smile made Kimberly's heart beat faster and her cheeks turn red. "Hello, I saw you yesterday. Here, I decided to bring you some warm clothes," Kimberly said, stammering at every word. The man's face brightened instantly, while his eyes lit up with a playful fire. "Thank you, ma'am. You're too kind. I'm very grateful," the man answered in a pleasant, quiet voice. The young people looked at each other, and then, without saying a word, burst out laughing in unison. Then the stranger offered to walk Kimberly home in a friendly manner. As it turned out, the young man's name was Justin Patterson, and he had been living on the street for several years. Nevertheless, the man was in no hurry to share the reasons that led him to become homeless. To Kimberly's surprise, her companion turned out to be a very smart and well-read person who also knew a lot about art and literature. Wow, how does he know all this? Do all homeless people know the works of Hemingway and Monet? Kimberly thought. Now she saw the homeless man in a completely different light. Moreover, now Kimberly noticed something that she didn't pay attention to at first. The strange thing was that Justin had very clean hands and well-groomed fingers, the kind that a good pianist or surgeon would have, but not a homeless person. The time spent in an interesting conversation flew by unnoticed. "Well, here we are. Do you want to come in for tea?" Kimberly asked, plucking up her courage. Justin smiled and shook his head in response. "Please don't take it the wrong way, but maybe some other time. I don't think we're ready for it," the man added. Kimberly understood the man and decided against insisting. But as she waved goodbye to Justin, she suddenly got a strange feeling, something she'd never felt before. Until that day, Kimberly had only ever read of such feelings in romance novels or seen them in romantic comedies, which Hollywood has always been famous for. The next day, the woman went to the square again and was very happy to find Justin there. The man was sitting on the same bench, and Kimberly got the impression that he was actually waiting for her. Only this time, instead of the warm clothes, the woman brought Justin a couple of hot dogs and a Diet Coke. Watching the man happily devour the treat Kimberly brought him, she caught herself thinking that she enjoyed taking care of Justin. Ever since then, Kimberly started seeing Justin almost every day. Moreover, the young woman didn't pay any attention to the condemning looks of the passers-by who couldn't understand their strange friendship. The fact was that with each passing day, Kimberly got more and more attached to Justin, who, thanks to his natural charisma and charm, overshadowed all the men that she'd met before. Judging by Justin's happy eyes, he was probably experiencing the same feelings. However, despite the obvious mutual attraction, the man was in no hurry to take the next step and cross the invisible line that would make them so much closer. Sometimes, Kimberly felt that Justin was keeping a secret from her, something he wasn't ready to share, but that would turn her entire life upside down. One day, while taking a walk in the park, the young people accidentally stumbled upon Monica and Stanley. It's hard to even describe how surprised Monica was at the sight of her best friend's companion. Of course, she didn't say anything right away, but when Justin tactfully stepped aside, she snarled, "Are you out of your mind, dear? Who's that with you? He looks homeless." After her friend's words, Kimberly immediately blushed and lowered her eyes in embarrassment. But then, having gathered up her courage, she found something to say to her more experienced friend. "You know what, Monica? It seems to me that it is my life. So I'm the one who gets to decide whom I date," Kimberly replied and walked away, taking the surprised Justin by the hand. However, the woman could still feel the heavy, condemning gaze of her friend for a long time. Monica simply couldn't understand Kimberly's feelings. It seemed that Justin could feel his girlfriend's anxiety and worries, and therefore he decided to do something he could only dream of before. Embracing Kimberly in his arms, the man gave her a long and sensual kiss, which without any doubt tied their hearts together forever. On that memorable day, the young people spent their first night together at Kimberly's house. And after the passionate night, Justin asked his beloved a question she'd been expecting. "Will you marry me, despite the fact that I'm homeless?" the man asked with pain in his voice. Kimberly hugged her beloved in response and whispered into his ear exactly what he wanted to hear. "Of course, dear. I've been waiting for a long time for you to finally propose to me," Kimberly said softly. "Trust me, you'll never regret choosing me to be your husband," Justin added with fervor. That night, the young people spent a long time talking about their future and their plans together. A few months flew by in anticipation and wedding planning. Of course, Kimberly understood that they simply couldn't afford a big celebration. Therefore, they decided to have a modest dinner in a cozy cafe on the corner of Main Street. At the same time, Justin flatly refused any financial assistance from the bride and promised to take care of all the expenses. "That's really nice of you, but where do you plan to get the money? You don't even have a job," Kimberly asked affectionately. To her surprise, Justin smiled enigmatically and told her not to worry about anything. Imagine the woman's surprise when the groom actually did manage to pay for quite a decent wedding, which left a good impression on all the attendees. Meanwhile, Justin himself and his bride were both dressed in expensive outfits from a world-famous couturier. Confused by how her new husband handles the finances, Kimberly decided to ask him about all of it the next day after the wedding. "Where did it all come from, honey? Did you rob a bank or something?" Justin's lawful wife asked in surprise. "No, I didn't rob anything, my dear. I just went to the bank and withdrew as much money as I needed from my bank account. Actually, I'm not really homeless or a beggar. I'm a successful businessman," Justin answered as softly as possible. Of course, Kimberly was stunned and couldn't shake the shock for a while. How is that even possible? And why did you lie to me all this time? Am I just another entertainment for a rich businessman? Kimberly asked in a voice trembling with agitation. But then, looking into Justin's eyes, the young wife realized that he loved her more than life itself. As it turned out later, before meeting Kimberly, Justin Patterson had been looking for his soulmate for a long time. Unfortunately, for the most part, women were attracted to the young businessman's wealth and not even his appearance, let alone to the kind person he actually was. Tired of the series of endless mistakes and disappointments, Justin decided to take drastic measures. Thus, he pretended to be homeless in order to meet a woman that would love him for him and not for his money. Tears welled up in Kimberly's eyes when she heard Justin's confession. Then, the loving husband got down on his knees and asked for Kimberly's forgiveness for having deceived her for so long. "Of course I forgive you, darling, but please don't ever do anything like this again. From this moment on, there can't be any secrets between us," Kimberly said and gently kissed her husband. The young people stood at the window for a long time, embracing each other. They looked at the fall wind play in the yellowed foliage and bend the tree branches to the ground, which waved at them like good old friends.